Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Rahi Victory. Welcome to Fertility Factor Fiction. And tonight we have an amazing special guest, Ms. Elizabeth King, a fertility coach extraordinaire, and she is joining us to talk about all things related to fertility coaching and her experience with fertility patients and how she helps facilitate their journey. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will have you on in just a moment. I have not found a ton of articles since last week, although there is probably one I'll bring up with you guys shortly. And then we'll probably do another show because it was kind of an interesting one on the impact of fertility clinics that are owned by businesses and private equity and venture capital, because there was just a study released on that. So I'm so happy to see someone had the chutzpah to go and do it. And that study showed that there was a increase in costs, and no one has ever shown that there is a benefit in terms of outcome. So that should be interesting to see, and I think that would be particularly useful and very interesting. So something to look at and something we'll definitely be checking out, and exciting for sure for all of us. So I'm super excited to have you guys all here, and welcome aboard for the show, and welcome to Ms. King. So Elizabeth King is a very renowned fertility coach, and she is joining us tonight to answer your questions and to share her knowledge and wisdom and experiences with us. So welcome aboard, Ms. King. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very, very great honor to have you on board. So tell me a little bit about you and what kind of got you into fertility coaching and what sort of background you have from all this.
Sure. Well, my real story actually started 27 years ago when I was 19. My sister was diagnosed with a rare cervical cancer and had to do a radical hysterectomy within a matter of days, and was told that they could keep her ovaries, and yet you were going to be doing extreme radiation chemotherapy. So even in my 19-year-old brain, I knew that the chances of anything surviving within that was probably not likely. We were focused on the fact that we wanted her to survive. She was focused on the fact that she would never be able to have children. Now, again, this was many years ago, and the technology is much different now. And we all got, there's four of us, four girls. We all went to this RE to say, we'll have the baby for her. Right. And that kind of led on the initial education around fertility. Again, 19 years old, I didn't know what a cervix was at that time, etc. Fast forward to getting divorced at age 30, I went to go freeze my own eggs, and at that time was told I was too young based on the technology at the time. Okay. And went back again at 36, still single, and the doctor said, okay, well, we'll do it now because technology has changed a bit, and, here we go. So fast forward to age 39 and pushing 40, I had some fibroids that my regular OB had told me it was not an issue, and my gut feeling was, so I went back to the fertility doctor again, who now knew me really well, and said, yes, in fact, those fibroids are an issue in trying to get pregnant based on the location. I did a myomectomy and was pregnant the first time that I could try after that. Went on to have 3 children after the age of 40, subsequent miscarriages, etc. And it was through that first miscarriage that I had taken my previous 15-year life coach practice into really focusing into fertility and recognizing that this up and down journey of waiting for, calls every other day from the RE of what's happening, what's not happening, is such a roller coaster. And really just another day in the office for them. And for us, it was life-changing. We were hanging on to every single call that we were getting from that doctor. Right. And the PTSD from the experience and the miscarriage losses was profound. So here we are now, years later, and helping other people through that journey.
Amazing. That is a very rich background story. So thank you for sharing that with us. And now you've, of course, piqued my curiosity. So did one of the sisters end up carrying for your sister?
No, she has no children. She is the only surviving patient of that type of cancer in the world, still to this day. So she's kind of famous in that gynecological oncology world, but
Sure.
no children.
Well, I mean, as long as she's had
She's
a
alive.
good, healthy life since then, at least that's something
Absolutely.
to be happy about. So that's good. So you mentioned life coach. So I'm assuming you kind of took the experience from what had happened with you as a young woman and built that into a career as a life coach, and then transitioned from that life coach part to the fertility part. Is that the right sequence?
Correct. I had been seeing therapists throughout my life for different reasons, marriage therapists through my first marriage, etc. And it was
Sure.
kind of through that first experience realizing there has to be a different way of just talking about stuff and really moving forward with a path and a plan and accountability for somebody to do that. And back then in 2009, there was life coaches really weren't a thing too much.
Right.
Okay, you're from California, you eat sushi, you're a life coach, and you probably do yoga every day, kind of thing. And now it's much more well known, and kind of we're dealing with the same type of thing with fertility coaching, where people don't really know what does that even mean, and where does it fit into this whole structure.
Right. So, did you have any kind of fertility support when you were a patient yourself as you went through your own journey?
No, I didn't. And the poor phlebotomist and all the people that were there every day, go watching me go through this journey, they certainly weren't qualified to be dealing with the emotional aspect through it. And
Yeah.
I was very aware of that at the time too, having been in that type of mental health place of helping others. And they were amazing and were doing the best they could, but really that wasn't what they were there to be paid to do every day too, is to, oh, poor Elizabeth, you're going to be okay. That wasn't their role. So no, I wasn't supported in that sense. And when I asked about it, really the only option that was given at that time was Resolve, which is great, but also at this time wasn't really what it is today, and it was only for group settings. And at that time, I didn't really feel like I resonated too much with a lot of like going to tell my story in a group setting, so to speak, at that moment.
Well, for sure, it's a deeply personal journey for many people, and it's not necessarily the kind of thing they want to share in a group. I mean, this has some of the most intimate details of any individual or couple's lives. So, of course, it can be hard to open up to a group of people and say, this is what's going on with me. So I totally understand that. So, yeah, I guess you kind of saw that lack of support and thought this would be a great area. So did you kind of develop this on your own, or did you do any training in it, or did it just kind of come organically because you had gone through the process yourself?
Both, actually. I think I remember saying to my doctor, I feel like I'm getting this huge master's degree in a whole new language and education just by all the questions. And I'm sure he was very annoyed by all the questions. But I knew early on, again, because of my history with the medical side from my sister, as well as just being exposed to it, I really realized I geek out on all this stuff. I was super fascinated by it. I loved everything about it. I loved the fact that it was, for lack of a better term, kind of a growing industry and people were talking about it more. I was really fascinated by that because of where I had seen it come years prior to it, right? When we first started it in 1994, it was hard to find a reproductive endocrinologist, really. And now in Orange County, where I live, they're very easy to be found, essentially. So I got a lot of education from my own journey, but then also did a certification program in the fertility health process where I learned a lot from midwives, doulas, nurses, doctors, everybody kind of bringing that together. And even within that, noticed that it was very medical based. And I really wanted to come to a process where we were talking about the mind, body, and spirit, and how all of those things came to play, because I felt like we couldn't talk about one thing without the other, and vice versa. Again, from my own experience and helping other women throughout the journey, recognizing all of these things come to play.
So what's a typical client that's looking for your services? kind of, paint me a picture of who they are and then sort of what you offer them and how that works. Excuse me.
Everyone kind of, as you have seen, everyone comes with a different story and a different objective. Some people come because they've tried 6 rounds of IVF and they're just at their wits' end. Some people are finally taking a break and they just don't know what else to do next.
Right.
So I find that people who are down this road are super motivated to figure out what to do next, and they're very type A. They feel like I've checked all the boxes, I've done all the things, and I just want somebody to help with whatever that missing piece is. And sometimes it's figuring out what are they seeing that they didn't realize that they need to be addressing. Again, maybe they're super stressed with work. Maybe they're having some other gut issues and other things happening because of the stress or whatever it may be. Relationship issues, I see a lot of times because of the fertility journey and or financial issues. So there's all this combination of other things that have gone into it, as well as figuring out how to change clinics and why they might need to do that. Recently, we see a lot of people that have been told they need to go down the egg donation route, and that's really hard to get their head around. So we help them kind of step into that, see what that looks like, talk to other clients that have gone through that, so they can see they have their baby and it's amazing, and it's really not that difficult of a process once you get your head around that idea.
Sure.
And most people never think they're going to be told that that's the road they need to go down. So it takes a lot of different turns based on what they've been through. Perhaps miscarriage loss is their kind of Achilles heel, and they've been through it many times, and they're just kind of frustrated and not getting answers that they're looking for.
Right.
So we approach it from a standpoint of meeting them where they're at and understanding the ups and downs of the waiting process of IVF, the egg retrieval process, the miscarriage loss, and how do you start again after that. And that's really, Dr. Victory, where I saw the gap was when I had gone to a therapist after my first miscarriage, and I was devastated. I could not even speak. And I didn't know, I left that office not knowing if this woman had had a miscarriage, not had a miscarriage, did she have any kids? And I was just looking for hope. And most therapists, I won't say all, but most don't really share their own experience through it. Right. And being a coach, you really do kind of coach them through it like a personal trainer or an athletic coach, where you're in it with them. You're talking with them. It's not just, I'll see you Tuesday at 3 to talk about this. This could be, I got a call from my doctor today and we need to pivot fast and I don't know what to do.
Right.
So that's a little bit of how it works depending on who and what they're coming to the table with.
So, and by the way, for the audience that's watching, if you have questions, don't hesitate to post them, and Tarek's here and he'll get to those. But do you, I'm going to monopolize you first. So do you tend to work one-on-one with your clients, or do you have a team of people that are facilitating this? And then is it mostly like dialogue, or do you have them run through exercises? I know like there are online programs, that kind of thing. So how do you kind of walk them through their journey? Are there different tools for different groups like you just mentioned, or is it kind of a strategy or generalized approach that you take at least initially to get them up and running?
I mean, initially we always talk about where they've been and what's gotten them to where they're at right now, and what is it that they want to get out of coaching. Everybody seeks somebody out with an outcome. They want to feel better, or they want a baby, really, in our cases, right? When people come to see us, that's the bottom line. But most, they just want to navigate this process in a more calm and playful, joyful manner instead of it being so heavy. So we kind of walk through what's their day-to-day life like right now. Is their fertility calendar ruling their life? In most cases it is, right? Okay, call me on day 1 of your period, and they're like, we can't do anything or go anywhere around this. So we really kind of weed through the process of what's happening with every aspect of their life, and then we hone in on the actual kind of fertility team that we're building. So who is their doctor? Do they have an acupuncturist? Are they seeing a therapist? I always recommend if they have external kind of depression or things that they're coming to the table with, that they would want to see somebody else in a study with a coach as well.
Right.
So it really just depends on what that person is seeking as the outcome for that moment. Like for people right now, a lot of them are on a break during summer and they want to get ready for that going into their next round, whether that's a transfer or a retrieval. So how can we make it the best time for them possible and not really dreading that upcoming retrieval or transfer and be excited about it? Because they're just living this human experience and we all base our emotions on our past experience. And for them, that past experience hasn't been good. So how do we change how we come to the table differently than we did last time? Whereas their doctors may be changing their protocol or doing something else, we want to change the other aspect of it, right? So how are they showing up in their life? What are they creating every day? How are they having fun? All the things that kind of go across the board with people, but then also depending on each person's independent story, we come in a little bit different.
So as a fertility specialist on kind of the other facet of this journey, the more medicalized part of it, I do always want to pay very close attention to the journey my patients are going through, and certainly never miss anything important that could contribute to a better experience for them. Are there things you see, or I guess wish, from your experience, both personal and now in your practice, that REs could do better to address patients' concerns? Like I certainly can say that I know most fertility centers aggressively would avoid even talking about anything spiritual that you mentioned earlier with fertility patients. It's just not part of the discussion. Medical, maybe the naturopath, maybe some traditional Chinese medicine or something like that. But, once you start getting into meditation, yoga, any kind of spiritual thing, you talk to people about prayer. I mean, that's considered like way off topic and generally not only not encouraged, but just kind of almost avoided. So are there things in there that you kind of wish we would address? Like, is there something all fertility specialists should learn from watching the show tonight to do a better job with our patients?
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that there are more and more doctors that are becoming more and more aware of the fact that there is more to this story than just this medical side of things. The Mayo Clinic did a study in 2013 that the path of a cancer patient is very similar to a fertility patient. That's pretty heavy, right? So knowing that the information that a patient is getting from you every morning or every day that they see you, they need that time to digest what that actually is meaning to them, right? And for most of the information we're getting is not really retained while we are there. And a lot of it is gone through the nurses, which are amazing and all of that sort of stuff. But then when we walk out the door, I say as a patient, when we're walking out the door, we're kind of just feeling super lost and alone. And what do we do now? And how do we navigate this process? Because it's so much more than that quick, not interview, quick appointment that we have with a doctor, so to speak. Sure. So knowing that there's so many aspects and facets to a patient that go into not only their healthy, what they're ingesting, right? But the stress hormones that take place in their body are affecting the outcome of their body. And that's scientifically proven, we know that. So any doctor can't really deny that fact because there's so many studies around that. And so that's where we step in to help regulate the nervous system, help regulate the cortisol system so everything can work together. Some people don't want to meditate. They don't want to journal. They don't want to do all of those things. And that's where your coach, whoever you're working with, should find different avenues for you to regulate your nervous system and all of those things so that the scientists like yourself, the doctors, can really do their magic in conjunction with what we're doing. So the spiritual aspect of it is in and of itself sometimes funky, but I'm glad that you brought it up because we have this conversation often about now a lot of clinics offer acupuncture as part of their treatment with the transfers and whatnot. Right. People know what that means. They know Chinese medicine. They have an idea about that. Sure. Coaching is so big and it varies per coach. So I'm glad that you asked that question. And I really push people to talk with each coach that they're interested in working with to see how they work specifically in order to improve their outcome.
Yeah, I think, kind of growing through this process, going from training to practice to expansion now and being fairly busy. One of the things that kind of was a red flag early on was the vast majority of fertility centers really don't address that part of the patient journey. It's here's your medication, here's your protocol, here's your calendar, show up for your ultrasound, and that hand holding that is kind of necessary for a variety of reasons, in my opinion, not just from the educational component of it, but also from the standpoint of the fact that a lot of patients are stressed, as you mentioned, and then that does impact the hormones, or they are unsure of decisions that they need to make and they're not getting enough time from their physician, or even a lack of clarity. I mean, probably my biggest complaint about all of my fellow fertility specialists is there are very few people that actually explain things. Over and over again, we hear from patients, who went to another center, and I say to them, what was wrong? What did they tell you is wrong? They go, we don't know. They didn't tell us anything. So I think that element of it for us as fertility specialists is really critically important to address, and unfortunately is woefully poorly addressed, which is why fertility coaches is really a new phenomenon, but we've had very good relationships with our local coaches, and I think the more people learn about people like yourself and others who are providing these types of services, really the better the journey is for the patients, because anytime we can support them through that journey, it makes it so much better. We always use the catchphrase here that no one walks alone at VRC, but it's a hell of a lot easier to not walk alone when you've got a fertility coach jogging along the path with you the whole time. So we really see that synergy, and it can be hugely beneficial for the patients. I think it's a wonderful thing that you guys do, and especially when it's done the right way. I mean, I think it's a different story when you have certain individuals who are kind of practicing medicine on the side, telling patients what to do and what to eat and what not. But it's definitely amazing when you're looking at it from that multifaceted standpoint of what's your mental health like, what's your spiritual health like, what's your physical health like, what are your goals and aspirations with this, and let's build a model for you with your physician that works. So do you work closely with the doctors as well, and do you find that they're accepting of your services, or is it still kind of touch and go in that area?
Yes, we work with the doctors, and we get a lot of referrals from the doctors, quite honestly, when they're able to say, like, I have a patient that's feeling pretty uneasy or sensitive, or lack of a better term, a little more high maintenance. Are you open to working with them? And we all kind of know we go through these heightened senses of, or times of, just wanting more answers than the nurses can give us or the doctor has time for us, right? And that's again where a coach can help to mitigate some of that between them. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because a really good coach builds your fertility team. Your coach
Right.
is not to be teaching you or telling you what to do medically, telling you what your protocol should be or shouldn't be, nutrition, all of those things. If they're a nutritionist, has studied that and whatnot, specific to fertility, even, I would say, because it's so broad. And what I see a lot are people who have gone through it and then say, okay, I'm going to be a fertility coach, but they may be a genius in their own what they went through, right? They may have had PCOS, so they know a lot about PCOS, or they may have
Right.
had fibroids, so they know a lot about that. But there's so much more to that, to really holding the space. We call it, say, not getting in the pool with your patient, your client, and knowing where those boundaries are and knowing where your lane is, right? So there's the fertility doctor, the OB, whoever it is that you're working with, the acupuncturist, the nutritionist, dietitian, if they're working with a naturopath as well, whatever it may be, everybody has a space and a place for that patient in order to lift them up to get to their point of success. And I think that's what's really important. You want to make sure that everyone's kind of staying in their lane and supporting each other, and ultimately supporting the patient for that goal.
I'm chuckling because my nurse manager's favorite expression is everybody stay in their lane. So I love that you said that. It's echoing in my mind. So do you have a team of people that help you, or are you kind of doing this solo when you're approaching it with patients?
So we also coach other fertility coaches in order to kind of have this domino effect of getting more people out there with a curated information so that, again, we don't have people just turning up saying, I can do this without really being vetted for the role, essentially. This is such a huge turning point in people's lives, and it's so delicate, and we don't want to say things that we can't achieve and show up in a way that isn't really ethical, I would say, in integrity. So we coach other people to do that. And then we have group sessions as well as individual one-on-one. So again, you'll find that there's some people that maybe their case is so unusual. They may have 2 uteruses and they don't want to talk about that in a group setting, right?
Right.
They may be doing it themselves, or a single mom by choice or not choice, but again, they can't relate to other people that are going through this journey. So there's so many reasons that people seek out one-on-ones versus group sessions, but we do opt for group sessions so that it can, again, take some of the burden off. If maybe you just want to be a fly on the wall and know that there's other people going through similar things. Because as unique as your story may be, we all know the disappointment. We all know the desperation. We all know kind of you never thought in a million years you would be on this path. You thought, don't have sex because you're going to get pregnant. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's really not the case. Now what?
Right. What's the most common, I guess, complaint or concern you hear from patients that come to you?
They're just frustrated and exhausted. I feel like are the biggest complaints. Not really understanding why, like you said, nothing's really explained to them to the full extent of why things are happening, and not really understanding why can't we get the answers that we need to get, or why can't we change the protocols? If it didn't work last time, why aren't they changing it again? Or, I continue to have the same issues. Maybe I shouldn't be taking Equilibron, right? Or whatever it may be. And so those types of frustrations, but also really just kind of this, they get into this chronic level of depression and sadness, kind of, because the whole world is revolving around this calendar of when they're going to be retrieving, when they're going to transfer, and whether that happens, and then waiting that 9 days to get the test. And, so it's not fun. It's not an ideal way to live life. And that's why we really just try to tee that up in a different way so they can actually be having fun. And we are the reminder, checking in with them every day, every other day. How are you doing? What's going on? What's the update? Just that accountability of we're shifting the neural net in their brain, that it's not going to be that same human experience that you had before. We're literally having and doing tools to change that. And it's different for everybody, like I said before.
So do you have kind of like a program people go through? Is it like you're going to be with us for 6 weeks or 12 weeks or they have different packages that they can select? Or is it just kind of let's come for one session and then if you need more, you can come for more?
We do 3 sessions of 3 or 6. And within that comes additional Voxer support, which is essentially like texting. Again, because we all know that this journey is not a once a week for 50 minutes sort of deal. It changes on the day, basically. Yeah. So we are there to respond to them within, we say 24 hours, it never lasts that long, but just to the check-in, to say, how are things going? I have one client right now that has to now do a removal of some cysts, and so that whole shift has changed to finding a surgeon rather than working with the RE. So we're working through that of, finding referrals. What does that look like? How dealing with the delay, thinking you're having a transfer to now you're going to have surgery and figuring all that out. So it really just depends on what they're going through. But 3 or 6 weeks is a package with the hopes that, we're not signing them up for a 3-month term because we're hoping that they'll be out and pregnant by that time.
Right. So that's obviously a lot of hand holding that you do through the journey for them. And I think, again, that's so critical because we tend to either ignore that element, like I said earlier, or it's just not addressed as well as it should be. We've obviously got amazing nurses. We've got an amazing team. Some centers have a psychologist or a counselor on hand, but the ability to kind of instantly reach out and have someone there and be there for you on an emotional level, on that spiritual level, or even if it's just on a, I have a quick question that I need to run by somebody level. We're not good at doing that. And so I think that's the niche you guys have really addressed in a incredibly meaningful and powerful way. So like I said, we love having the fertility coaches there because they do really make the journey smoother, and I think patients do benefit from that. The easier they have from the experience, the more simple it is, the more educated it is, the more calm it is for them, the better they do. And that's something that's being shown over and over again. We know that the stress levels can really impact your success rate. So certainly anything that happens on your end that reduces that is great. I guess my one question to you, and I'm just curious, is you're kind of taking all of this burden on. So what do you do when you're stressed from listening to other people's stresses and frustrations all day? Also having gone through it yourself, like how do you deal with that, or how does your team deal with that as they're kind of absorbing all of this from others?
That's a great question. I first want to address what you said before. Thank you for pointing that out about what we do, but also we bow down to what you guys do and all your journey through school. And, like that was not the path for us. Hence the fact we didn't go down that road. And so there's something that we continue to have such a high esteem for all the doctors that specialize in fertility and really drive this home, because if it wasn't for you guys, at the end of the day, that's really where the outcome comes in a lot of these stories. So thank you for doing what you do, and now seeing the broader vision for all of these patients that are coming through the door. I get that question a lot of how do I kind of detach from the heaviness of the situation? And it can be, especially with the losses and the disappointments and whatnot. But I also feel super blessed to be able to know that I'm fortunate that I can basically do some tools it's my own type of meditation, so to speak, to detach from stories or situations that I know are maybe a little too heavy, that I don't want to take back to my family that night and whatnot, because we are dealing with a lot of big things, and the fact that I can still relate to them and let them know that I get it, and cry with them when it's appropriate, and really keep strong for them when they need somebody to be strong because they're not. I feel very fortunate that I have a gift to do that. And, for now, it works.
That's amazing. Roughly how many people are you helping per year?
Oh, gosh. Between group sessions and one-on-ones, I think per year we're probably at 1,000 to 1,500.
Oh wow! So it's a huge number of people.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, fantastic. And if people want to contact you, you help people from anywhere. It doesn't matter where they're coming from, whether they're North American, Canadian, U.S., European. It doesn't matter.
All over the world. Yeah.
All over the world.
The beautiful thing about fertility is it is the same no matter where you are.
Right.
As far as the stress level, the drugs are the same. You'll be hard pressed to find things that are different. The one things that I would say that are different some places is whether they grade embryos and things like that. But really, it's very similar no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I know a little bit about international fertility care, and I definitely see some differences in some countries. Europe is a lot more kind of reserved, and because a lot of it is socialized, they have no hesitation telling patients to just come over and over and over again. And in some instances in the US, it can be like that too, where clients have insurance and the fertility centers just keep telling them to keep trying until it works. Whereas in Canada, most people are not insured. And so, and because we work in this socialized healthcare system, we kind of very fiercely defend our patients. So we're the polar opposite. We're not telling them to come over and over again. I very much want the first cycle to run perfectly and smoothly and make it work right from the get-go, so that people aren't using a lot of their hard-earned money and resources and future for their children to invest into the process. Rather, they're successful right off the hop and they can always go tell their friends, and that's how we want to grow our business. So yeah, I do see differences.
That statement, Dr. Victory, is huge. For somebody to come in with that energy, for you to say that we want to nail this on the first round, yeah, sign me up, right? That's a different
Yeah.
energy of like, okay, well, this is how it's gonna go. It might go this way, it might go that way. Like, I think we're all just looking for somebody to kind of be that, hold that ground. And yeah, maybe it works out a different way, but going into it, like, let's go, let's make it happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell patients, like, we don't do it unless it's perfect. I mean, I'm not interested in saying, oops, we need to do it again, or have a disaster at some standpoint, or not address everything. One of our common phrases here is, cookie cutter protocols in medicine don't really work in this field at all. We're not baking cookies, we're making babies. So, following that kind of formulaic medicine approach where you don't address all of the different elements really just doesn't work. And even within the biology, which is kind of our more specific element, everybody's different. So it's critical to address all of those. If people want to get in touch with you, what is the easiest way for them to do that?
My website, elizabethking.com, or Instagram at theofficialelizabethking.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Are there questions for Ms. King?
There are some. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are some.
Do you mind taking a few questions?
Sure.
Awesome.
Okay. I just scroll here.
They kind of scroll by, so Tarek's always got to scroll back to find them.
Hi Elizabeth, been in egg retrieval hells for 2.5 years and finally going into my first FET this fall. How to lean into feeling more calm going into the first transfer? How many sessions with you?
We do a free discovery call. 15 to 30 minutes for us to just feel like, is this a good fit for you? And even during that, we can figure out what feels good for you. Like I said, I don't tell people to journal, meditate, all those things if that's not your jam. You need
Right.
to have something resonate with you on a cellular level, so it changes you on a cellular level. You feel good about doing that. So that's where we kind of dig through to see what is it that makes you feel good, and then what that would look like for you going into whatever it is that you may be going into.
Another question here is, do fertility coaches answer medical questions?
No, we do not. So we make that very clear. We don't answer medical questions. We don't diagnose. We help you to come up with medical questions to talk to your doctor about that maybe you're not sure about or not aware of. So you can go into your appointments maybe a little bit better prepared with better questions, but we by no means will help you diagnose or answer questions in that regard.
And I think that's critical because I think a lot of times there are specialists, associated or affiliated healthcare specialists that will kind of approach this from the standpoint of saying, I've learned things, I know things, I can offer advice. And then there are those like yourself who say, I know the information, but like you said, I'm going to stay in my lane. And my lane can be to facilitate helping them develop the questions they either need to ask or should be asking. But I'm not going to provide the answers. I'm going to leave that to the biology guy or the doctor or whatever the case is. And we're going to facilitate growing that knowledge base that they need because you know where the gaps are from your experience, but not fill it yourself. You're just creating the framework to fill it rather than filling it. And I think that distinction speaks volumes about you because we don't always find that. I mean, I still deliver babies. I'm one of the very few fertility specialists that still practices obstetrics too. And we do get individuals, for example, sometimes doulas who are wonderful and they're supportive and they're, really making the experience an incredible experience for the patients. But at the same time, you get some who are in there who feel that, they have medical qualifications and will start kind of, instead of supporting the process, kind of offering medical advice. And that can not only be potentially, complex for us, but sometimes harmful. And so I love the fact that you're differentiating there. And I think that's a super important distinction for patients to be aware of too, because a lot of times when they don't get the answers from us, they're looking for it elsewhere. And fertility coaches are a really good resource because you have that experience, but it's still really important to flip that back and say to the patients, you deserve to get the answers you need from your doctor, and it's our responsibility as the physicians to provide that. If we're not doing a good job, it's, that's important for us to know and to do better with.
And that's where I would say then you need to find a new doctor if they're not answering those questions. But back to your point about the biology of everybody being different, they can find somebody in a chat room or online that looks similar to them, and so they think that they have maybe the same diagnosis or they want the same protocol. But if they have a different thyroid level or they have, something else we don't know about, that's why you need to go back to your doctor and see, like, what is it specifically for me that I need, right? What is your AMH different than the next person? So it's going to require something else. It's just too messy to go down that road if you're self-diagnosing or taking a diagnosis or medical advice from somebody other than your doctor.
For sure.
Maybe a quick question for Liz. Will stress impact implantation or embryos growing?
Well, I would say stress impacts everything in our lives. Now, to the effect that it, as I always like to say, is it going to be the deal breaker for your success or non-success? That's really kind of the unknown. We don't really know that, right? There's no scientific evidence to date that I'm aware of that can say excellent levels of stress mean that that's not going to happen. But what we do know is stress affects the body in all ways. Anytime, anywhere you look at it, we know that. So my answer would be yes, but there's no scientific evidence that I'm aware of that would say how that would work specifically.
Yeah, I mean, from the scientific literature, we know that there can be reductions in success related to your stress level, but it's so hard to kind of measure and to apply, right? Like, how do you compare your stress versus my stress versus Tarek's stress? He's always stressed because the show is super complicated to run, but it's a tough thing to measure, and comparing stress levels between people, there's no metric for that, right? So it's a hard study to apply to the general population, but I agree. I mean, it's definitely not a good thing. It's certainly not going to be helpful to be stressed. And we do know that there are either subtle or gross hormonal changes that come along with high levels of stress. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're going to probably take some live questions not related to fertility coaching just for the last few minutes. So I want to offer you our very, very sincere gratitude and thanks for coming on the show tonight. It was wonderful to have you. So you can reach Elizabeth at elizabethking.com or the official Elizabeth King on Instagram. So reach out to her if you need fertility coaching help, and she and her team will be there to help you guys out. And thank you so much. And if you have further insights or things you'd like to offer back to our audience in the future, don't hesitate. You were wonderful to have on, and we would love to hear from you again.
Thank you so much.
Have a great evening. You take care.
You too.
Okay, bye now.